Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so I've decided to bring you today a video, a deck analysis. We haven't seen one of these for a while. I haven't actually given you an actual factual deck list for a little while. That makes me feel like a terrible person, but ladies and gentlemen, today I am here to fix it. I am showing you a Vespiquen Flareon deck. Now, I know you've seen these Vespiquen Flareon decks. I've seen many of them too. This is first of all to give you what I believe is a very good list with which to start testing, but also I am going to make the argument for Forest of Giant Plants, because I think this is a very, very good card that should be played in this deck. So let's go over the basics of the deck. We have two attackers and they have the exact same attack. For a double colourless energy, you do 20 damage plus 10 more damage for each Pokemon in your discard pile. So we play Vespiquen, Be Revenge, it does that. You have 4 Pokemon in the discard pile, it does 60 damage, and so on. But we also have Flareon, who's got Vengeance, which has the same kind of attack. Now, you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, what's the point in having both? I'm very glad you asked. The problem is, and this is why this deck has never been particularly good in Standard. Of course, Flareon is not currently legal in Standard, so, there's that. But the problem is, that whole DCE malarkey. You can only play 4 DCEs, so when you run out of DCEs, and you can see we're playing 4 in this deck, when you run out of DCEs, we run into a little bit of a problem. So what we do is we combine Flareon with Blacksmith, being a supporter card that allows you to attach 2 fire energy from your discard pile to one of your fire Pokemon. And of course, this being a deck where we're trying to pump Pokemon into the discard pile in order to do more damage, it's not going to be all that much more difficult to also chuck a couple of fire energy in there as well. The reason we're playing a 4-3 Flareon line is partly for space and partly because Vespiquen is our main attacker here. Flareon comes up when we cannot use Vespiquen. And that's the Pokemon in the deck. Nice and simple. What other Pokemon are we playing? We are playing an Aldino because he's got the ability Busybody. He heals special conditions. Now, he also heals 10 damage, which can screw up your opponent's maths occasionally when trying to get a KO, but most of the time, he's just there to get rid of special conditions. Decks like Excelgor are going to be really bad for this deck, and let's not forget that Hypnotoxic Laser is still very big and expanded, so Aldino isn't out to them. We play 2 Shaymini X, which allows us to draw until we got 6 cards in our hand, and we play 1 Jirachi, that allows us to search for a supporter. We don't like playing low HP EXs, but the reality is we need them to set up. You see, we're only playing 1 Blacksmith and 1 Lysander, so we need to play Jirachi so we can grab those cards out in an emergency. Other Pokemon, we've got 4 Unknown. Unknown allows you to put him in the discard pile and draw a card, which adds a little bit of consistency because you're drawing cards, but it also gets Pokemon into the discard pile, which of course, as discussed, we need to do. We are playing the Energy Evolution Eevee, just because in an emergency we can evolve using his ability up to the Flareon, although there is a 60 HP Eevee you can use if you so wish. And we're playing a single copy of Jolteon. Why are we playing a single copy of Jolteon? Because he turns your Vespiquen and your Flareon into electric-type Pokemon. Now, there are others we can play here, like, for instance, the Vaporeon that will turn them into water Pokemon. The reason we're playing this is because Yveltal is very big and expanded right now, and this gives us an easy way to one-hit KO Yveltal EX without having to get 15 Pokemon in the discard pile. And you'll see in a minute, this version of the deck, we get a few less Pokemon in the discard so that we get a bit more speed, so we've really got to play a Jolteon to give us a good matchup against these Yveltal decks. We're also playing 2 Wobbuffet, and the reason we're playing 2 Wobbuffet is very simple. When he's in the active, he turns off abilities for both players that aren't psychic. So in our deck, we've got to be careful that we don't play our Shaymin when Wobbuffet's active, and that we don't play our Jirachi when he's active. We can still use, however, our Unknown when he's active. I suppose I should also point out that it turns off Eevee. Why do we play Wobbuffet? We play Wobbuffet for Archeops. He turns off all of our, well, doesn't turn off abilities, Wobbuffet turns off his ability, Archeops stops us evolving from our hand. And we're not playing Evo Soda or Wally in this deck, so we have absolutely got, ladies and gentlemen, it is imperative, we have got to play some Wobbuffet in this deck, because what we do, our opponent takes a KO, we put Wobbuffet into the active, Wobbuffet turns off Archeops, and now we can evolve our Vespiquen, we can evolve into Flareon, we can evolve into Jolteon. So let's have a quick look at the energy in the deck. Very simple. We play 4 DCEs because it's amazing. It fuels both Vengeance and Be Revenge in one turn, and if we could play more than 4, we probably would. Why do we play 3 Fire Energy? Because 2 is a little bit too low. We need to draw into them. We need really 2 in the discard pile, so we can use Blacksmith. And if we only play 2, it's hard to draw into them, and to be honest, one of them could well be prized. We'd like to play more than 3, but the reality is it's very, very difficult to get away with less than 3. So we play 3 because we're kind of forced into it. So let's have a little look at the trainers now. We play 4 Battle Compressor. We want to dump Pokemon in the discard pile. We want to dump Fire Energy in the discard pile. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that Battle Compressor can allow you to thin out your deck. So if it's getting into the late game, you've evolved all the Vespiquen you can get rid of your Forest of Giant Plants. If you know you're not going to need your Jirachi, you can get rid of that. Let's say you know you're not going to need a Floatstone, you can get rid of that, and the less cards are in your deck, the more statistically likely you are to draw into the cards that you are going to need. And of course, we're playing 4 VS Seeker, so you can put any supporters from your deck into your discard using Battle Compressor and get them out with VS Seeker. The reason we're playing 4 VS Seeker, it's one of the best cards in the game. You play 4 VS Seeker. You draw 1, it allows you to get any card out of your discard. So as soon as our 1 Blacksmith has hit the discard pile, now, instead of trying to draw into our 1 Blacksmith, we're trying to draw into one of our 4 VS Seeker. We now have 4 times the amount of chances to draw into it, and that's good. We play Computer Search as our ace spec for 2 reasons. Firstly, this deck, or this particular build of the deck, is built around speed, and Computer Search helps us set up in the early game. It doesn't hurt, of course, and it allows us to drop 2 Pokemon in the discard pile. We play 1 AZ, it allows us to reuse Shaman, it allows us to reuse Jirachi, but the other thing it does very nicely here is it allows you to grab a Shaman or a Jirachi off of the field because we're playing the prize trade game. We are trying to KO with non-EXs, so if our opponent is KOing our EXs on our bench, that kind of defeats the object. So we can use it to save him. Blacksmith we've spoken about. I would not be upset at all if you put this up to 2. If it's prized, you need to get it out the prizes sooner rather than later. 1 Lysander is again less than I'd like. We are really pushed for space here. We've got to play 1 so we can choose which prize to take off our opponent's side of the field. Bring a Pokemon active and KO it. I would love to play more, I just can't find space. Playing 4 Sycamore is obvious. It's a very aggressive draw card. You dump your entire hand and draw 7. This is an aggressive version of the deck. And of course, it puts Pokemon in your discard pile. Slightly worrying that you sometimes have to use Sycamore to discard double colorless energies. It's a problem. What can you do? We play 2 Floatstone primarily for cards like Wobbuffet. I mean, it does allow you to retreat your unknown in the early game and discard it. But the other thing, of course, we want to have Vespiquen in the active attacking turn 1, so if we start Aldino or Shaman or Eevee or Jirachi or Unknown or Wobbuffet, we need to get them out the active. So we play 2 to try and increase our chance of drawing into it, but against any Archeops deck, we really need Wobbuffet, because they take a KO, we put Wobbuffet active, and Archeops, he don't do nothing no more. And that brings me to what I think is a bit different about my list. Now, I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination that nobody is playing Forest of Giant Plants in these decks. I'm sure they are. But I've not seen the good list, the winning list playing this card, and I don't see why. So, the rest of this video is going to be me trying to tell you guys why I think it's the play, although I've had arguments with people and not everyone agrees with me about this. It allows you to evolve your grass Pokemon whenever you like. They don't have to have been down for a turn, you can evolve them on turn 1. Now firstly, Combie's got 40 HP, and against any deck with bats in, Combee dies pretty darn quickly. But that's not the reason we're playing it. We want a turn 1 Vespiquen. We want to be attacking using Bee Revenge on the very first turn of the game. Now we can use intelligence gathering on turn 1 to try and draw some cards, but that's not what we're going for. So the whole point of this particular build of the deck is, yeah, I'm not playing quite as many Pokemon as a lot of people are. I want to get Vespiquen going nice and early. I want to be taking easy KOs, and I want to be winning the prize trade. And it's been built, I'm not going to lie, ladies and gentlemen, it's been built to try and take down the top decks in the format. So, judging by, and I'm going to use the CharizardLounge.com here. They put the it's run by a lovely chap, Andrew Wambolt. He collated all the City Championship results. So let's have a look at them. Actually, the best deck apparently is Vespiquen. Why do you play this build? Because Forest of Giant Plants gets you the first KO. If you go first, you can't attack. If you go second and you're not playing Forest of Giant Plants, what are you attacking with? You can use Shaman to hit for 30. You can use Aldino to hit for 30, I suppose. Eevee hits for 10. I mean, that could be fun, yeah? Oh, Unknown hits for 10. You're not KOing. You're not even KOing a Combee on turn 1. I suppose if you played a Muscle Band or 2, you would. But Muscle Band isn't often played in this deck because you'd rather play more Pokemon. So, you're not KOing anything turn 1, and even if you're playing Muscle Band, you've got to hope that your opponent is starting a 50 HP Eevee or a Combee, or you're not getting a KO anyway. If you're playing Forest of Giant Plants, on your first turn of the game, you evolve up, and look at the HP of these Pokemon. Aldino's got 80 HP, and Combee's got 40, and Eevee's got 50 or 60, and Unknown's got 60 HP. So what we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you play Forest of Giant Plants, you are getting the first KO. Which means in the mirror match, as long as nobody's benching loads of EXs and allowing their opponent to jump ahead in the prize trade, whoever gets the first KO has a massive advantage. If you go first or second and you're playing Forest of Giant Plants, you are almost certainly going to get the first KO as long as your deck sets up okay, and that gives a massive advantage. Second best deck at City Championships was Yveltal EX. Now, to be perfectly fair, I don't know if one Jolteon is going to be enough, but he at least gives you a chance. He allows you to KO Yveltal EX nice and easily if you've got like 7 Pokemon in the discard pile. Now, it's not going to be amazing, but it's going to give you that little bit of an edge. This is the one matchup I think gets a little bit weaker, but it's really not the end of the world. You've got Jolteon, and you can still pile a whole bunch of Pokemon in the discard to give yourself a chance. Now, 3 and 4 were Seismitoad Crobat and Seismitoad Giratina. So if we take that all as one, firstly, Forest of Giant Plants helps to protect your 40 HP Combee from being killed by bats, as we said before. Secondly, Seismitoad is weak to grass, so if you get Vespiquen going, and you're always going to have at least one turn, going first or second, before they can use Quaking Punch, so your Vespiquen are going to burn through their Seismitoads very quickly. Seismitoad Giratina could present some problems because Giratina stops you using double colourless energy, and he stops you using stadiums, but you're only realistically going to need Forest of Giant Plants on the first, maybe second turn of the game. After that, you'll usually have a turn or two to evolve the Pokemon you need. So it doesn't really matter that he turns off Forest of Giant Plants. You're not playing any tools other than Floatstone, you can live without it. So as long as you can get a Flareon or 2 rolling, you can get him going with Blacksmith, and Giratina becomes a lot less scary. Now, you do have to have 16 of your 27 in the discard pile to KO Giratina. So, and he is one hitting all of yours back, so the Giratina becomes slightly dodgy, but if you can get a decent start, you should be okay. And let's not forget, you are going to be running through their Seismitoads, so they're going to have to use Giratina, and best case scenario, ladies and gentlemen, it takes 2 turns and 2 special energy. As soon as you've KO'd 1 or 2, that will be the game. The other top deck is Blastoise. We're only looking through the top 5, or we will be here all day. Actually, I'm going to mention Night March as well. Sorry, please don't hate me for that. So, Blastoise, nice and simply, it depends what build they're using. If they're predominantly using cards like Keldeo EX, well, that's weak to grass, and Vespiquen is going to destroy them. It is slightly more awkward if they play especially Articuno, his ancient trait Delta Plus, allowing them to take an extra prize when they take a KO. That's a slight problem, ladies and gentlemen, but it's not the end of the world. I think we'll be okay. Again, using Forest of Giant Plants means that you get extra turns. Let's say, for argument's sake, if you go first, then they can go second and get the turn 1 KO with Articuno, and then it's going to be very difficult for you to try and get a KO, the next turn. It becomes awkward. The extra speed of evolving helps you to take down Articuno. It really does. The last one I want to mention is Night March. And again, Night March is a non-EX deck, and you're essentially trading one-hit KOs with Night March. So all you need to make sure is if you get the first KO and don't have a bunch of Shamans and Jirachis on the bench, you are going to win. If they go second, then they're going to get the first KO. If you're not playing Forest of Giant Plants, even if you are, they've got the first attack, they're going to get the first KO. But if you go second, then they have a turn to set up, but not attack. You have a turn, but you're not going to attack, as we've just said. Maybe you can KO a Joltik with Shaming, because they've got 30 HP, or maybe you can KO it with Aldino, because again, they've got 30 HP, but it's going to be very, very difficult to do so, and you're going to need a lot of stuff. Whereas with Forest of Giant Plants, you can make sure that you get the turn 1 KO, even if they've got a Pumpkaboo active. Again, if they put a Joltik in the if they don't put a Joltik in the active, you're not getting a turn 1 KO going second. With Forest of Giant Plants, you can get a turn 1 KO going second and jump ahead in the prize race. I.e., with the exception of maybe Evil Tal and the Giratina's slightly awkward, this improves your matchups. It makes the non-EX attackers less lethal in Blastoise because you can get going a turn earlier potentially. It basically wins the mirror if you get set up. And it helps just with general speed. Now, there's a whole bunch of other decks out there. I don't know, let's throw out Manectric, for instance, where maybe the slightly lower Pokemon count does mean that you've got a slightly worse matchup. But as I said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm making an argument for a different build of the deck. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, make sure you click that like button. I'll give you a minute. I mean, not a minute, that would be awkward, but I gave you enough time to click like. Hopefully by now you've clicked it. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do so. And of course, if you think I'm an idiot for including Forest of Giant Plants, or you've got a better list that you'd like to share and maybe even embarrass me with, I encourage you to pop it all down in the comments. It's all good fun. As always, thank you very much for watching. I will be along with some more videos in the near future. Maybe we'll have a look at Greninja in the next video. It's going to be fun. Thank you very much for watching. Look after yourselves till next time. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.